welcome to Miss Music. Now, this video is going to be a kind of Herculean task for me. And I'm sitting here recording it now, wondering whether or not I'm going to be able to get through it. Do I have the stamina? It's 9:15 at night. Let's go for it. After making the video for Plectrum Electrum, many of you suggested Prince's albums. Listen to this album, listen to that album, and lots of different tracks that I should listen to. And I realized that apart from the hits, I did not really know Prince very well at all. So I spent weeks listening to his back catalogue, and I'm going to present my thoughts on this video. Some of the albums have become my new favorite things to listen to, and it's such a shame it's taken so long to discover them. I can only apologize for that. So thank you all once again for all your recommendations. Listening to this music has made me very, very happy. So let's begin in 1978 with the album For You. Now, I was 11 when this came out. Actually, I didn't even know that Prince had released something in the punk era. I kind of thought he was a product of the 80s. Weirdly, this album sounds like Prince. What do I mean by that? Well, I love David Bowie, but his debut album doesn't sound anything like what he later became. This album, I think, also must have influenced one of my favorite bands, Scritti Politti. I can really hear them in these songs. Would I like to listen to this album again? I'm not sure. It sounds to me a bit like Prince Light. So 1979, we get the release of the eponymous titled Prince. This sound is much more to the front. It's much better production than For You. As a preteen, I'm still not aware of Prince, although this album does have a song on it I do know, I Feel For You. But it's the Shaka Khan version that I'm familiar with and I bought when it came out. 1980, and it's the release of Dirty Mind. It's the start of the 80s. At this stage, I'm about 13 years old. And actually, I'm listening to Baggy Trousers by Madness. I don't know any of the tracks on this album, but they seem much more assured than the previous albums. Were any of you guys into Prince right from the beginning? And if you were, what was it about these early albums that drew you in, that made you really want to start listening to Prince? I like this one, and I'll listen to it some more. 1981, we have the release of Controversy. Prince is actually dressed on the cover of this album and looks much more like the Prince I know, very stylish. He's playing around with the sound of his voice, and I really love the title track of this album. 1982, we get the release of 1999. So I'm about 15 at this age, and I'm starting to get into music, mainly progressive rock and heavy metal. And at this time in my life, I'm listening to Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast on heavy rotation. But from this point in, Prince's career is impossible not to be aware of. It's impossible not to know his music. It's everywhere. I remember liking the track 1999. It sounded oddly robotic, futuristic. Even as a heavy metal teen, I knew this was good. Listening through these albums now, I'm surprised that Little Red Corvette was on this album. I thought that came much later. Now, 1984, we get the kind of breakthrough Prince album, I would imagine, Purple Rain. Now, one of the sad things I think about my teenage years is that musical clans were much more of a thing than they are perhaps today. And the bad thing about being in one is that they often stopped you from discovering other types of music. Even though I love tracks like Let's Go Crazy, I was never going to buy a Prince album. My friends would have disowned me. Fortunately, my brother had the sense to buy Purple Rain, and for many years, this would be the one Prince album I listened to from start to finish. 1985, we got the release of Around the World in a Day. I was 18 when this came out. I just started university. I listened to Around the World in a Day a few years ago. It's not my favorite, but I love the way Prince remains Prince whilst incorporating so many different styles. Paisley Park reminds me of the Small Faces. And I remember at the time really liking Raspberry Beret. 1986 and its Parade. I really don't know this one. And Prince is back on the cover, very scantily dressed. Listening to this now, I really like Christopher Trace's Parade. I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of Simon and Garfunkel, but Princified. I think if I had been listening to this album at the time, it would have now, at this stage, dawned on me just how good Prince is. I mean, he's a musical genius. He just seems to be able to bend any musical genre towards him and then make it sound like it was his all along. His voice is also getting that kind of very sassy, sexy tone to it on this album, and that comes across really well on the tracks New Position and Kiss. So 1987, again, Sign of the Times, super important album. The album was released at a time of my life when I was getting into American indie bands, a grunge sound, the Pixies. And then Prince released the track Sign of the Times, which blew me away. And still does today. When I was thinking recently about Prince, I was wondering, is he a good lyricist? And then you get that lyric, in France, a skinny man died of a big disease with a little name. And God, that says it all, doesn't it? Just incredible. I listened to this album recently. It is brilliant. I think much better than Purple Rain. I don't know if you think that. I really love the track It on this album. 1988, and we've got Love Sexy. So Prince is finally completely naked on the album cover. You have to admire his bravado. This album is so funky. I think I like this version of Prince and the rock version of Prince the best. To do funk well must be extremely hard. I don't know if you agree, but to me, funk is not just a musical genre, it's an attitude, and Prince had that attitude in spades. Okay, 1989, Batman. I kind of guess if you are a Prince fan, if you're a Prince fan at that time, this is maybe not one of your favorite albums, but it was the first Prince album I actually went out and bought. I love the Batman film, and Prince's music worked very well with it. And listening to it again for this video, I still like some of these tracks. The Future is great. The Electric Chair has a much harder sound than previous Prince songs, and Party Man really captures that Prince sound. 1991, we've got Diamonds and Pearls. Thunder is one of those exceptional tracks that combines many different styles of music in one song. And it must have been great to see this played live in a stadium. I love the way Prince can make a hit song as well, like Cream, that is not just ear candy, but still sounds great over 30 years after its original release. 1992, Love Symbol. Immediately on the track My Name is Prince, you can hear just how detailed Prince is with his production. There are so many elements to this track. I haven't listened to this album in full, but 7 has been on my playlist for the last few years. I love that track. At this point, I want to stop and ask you a question. Maybe you're able to answer this if you're a Prince fan. But what happened after Love Symbol? From the album 1999 to Love Symbol, Prince seemed to me to be everywhere. There was always a Prince song in the charts. But from this point onwards, those hits seem to have diminished. And I'm entering into a series of albums now that I know very little about. 1995's Come is a kind of weird album, I suppose. When Neil Young was having a spat with his record company, he recorded on purpose the truly awful Everybody's Rocking as a kind of two-fingered salute to Geffen. Prince, I think, was doing the same maybe with Come, a generally dull album, but one which he was contractually obliged to make. But even when he's not trying, he's still not bad. 1995 sees the release of The Gold Experience. I immediately liked this album. I even liked the corny NPG operator parts. Prince seems to be really on form on this album. There's so much energy here. I do like the rockier songs, and Endorphin Machine is just brilliant. How does Prince give the impression that this is a live performance? After listening to this one for the video, I have listened to it daily for the last month. 1996, Chaos and Disorder. After posting the Plectrum Electrum video, a lot of people recommended this album to me because it has a rockier feel to it. It's certainly different to a lot of the albums that went before. Another album Prince had to release due to contractual obligations. And again, he just seems incapable of writing a mediocre album. 1996 sees the release of Emancipation. Heading towards the end of the 90s, this album is a change, I think, in tone from Chaos and Disorder. You can hear from the first track, Jam of the Year, there's a lot more thought that's gone into the production on these songs. Prince's voice sounds absolutely amazing on this album. It is so smooth, and then it has that hint of gravel just when it's needed. 1998, The Truth. What was it like being a Prince fan from the beginning? I'm listening through these albums chronologically, and every time I think I know Prince, he brings out something that smacks me in the face and says, "You don't know me at all." It's an acoustic album, totally acoustic album, really. Where did it come from? It's great. 1999, we got Rave Unto the Joy Fantastic. And wow, the very first track is great. It has a kind of Rolling Stones guitar vibe to it. Overall, I found this album a little disjointed, and it seemed that it was geared more towards perhaps radio-friendly hits. I don't think it's one for me as an album. 2001, we've got The Rainbow Children. I like it when there's an odd narrative voice on Prince's albums. They always seem to me to be a little more experimental. The Rainbow Children starts out by sounding like a jazz album, with Prince's guitar sounding like something you might hear on a Frank Zappa track. I was reading that at this stage of his career, Prince had kind of withdrawn from the mainstream, and his albums were being listened to by just diehard fans. And it's such a shame because these albums are really good too. I really like this album. 2003, we got Expectation. Another straight to fans album sees Prince continuing the jazz theme and being his kind of brilliant self. I mean, who do you compare Prince to? Someone on the comment section for Plectrum Electrum nailed it when they said, the only person you really compare Prince to is Mozart. And I think that's so true. 2003, we have News, which is more jazz, no singing, very strange. Are there any fans out there that like this album? 2004, Musicology. Immediately, this seems much more like the Prince I know. And Prince is really on top form here. Prince is bringing his amazing musical style, his knowledge of so many different genres together to make this very exciting and captivating album. The title track takes me back to the 80s. I think with a nod to James Brown. 2006, 3121, carrying on from where musicology left off. This is Prince making great songs that are beautifully crafted. By this stage in their career, I think most musicians are turning out the same old songs, but a kind of weaker, diluted version of what they were in their prime. But Prince is an artist who sounds like someone who just loves making music, and it's always really thrilling. 2007, we've got Planet Earth. Now, this is the second Prince album that I actually owned at the time, and only because it was given away for free by a British newspaper. It's a pity because I think I got to listen to an entire Prince album, which was probably one of his weaker albums, with the caveat that even when he's not at his best, he's not bad. Luckily, I got to see him at this time at the live Mammoth 21 Nights O2 residency. That place holds around 20,000 people, and that concert blew me away. And from that moment on, I had this kind of deep respect for Prince. 2009, I don't know how this is pronounced, MPL Sound, I don't know. Again, this album nods back to the 80s, and it was part of a triple album, and I have not been able to listen to all of it. 2009, we've got Lotus Flower. This is one that just in the last week I'm really getting into. Immediately it sounds like one of the more experimental albums with more of a jazz feel. And I love the sound of the organ on this album. And his guitar sound is just stunning. How cool is Crimson and Clover? It's a cover version of the Troggs' Wild Thing within a cover version of Tommy James and the Shondells' Crimson and Clover. And, you know, when I was listening to it, I was thinking, I know this song. And then it's actually the chord progression is the chord progression of the Velvet Underground's Sweet Jane. So you've got these three songs all brought together by Prince. 2010, we got 2010, the album. This is another album that seems to have been given away for free in magazines or newspapers. On first listening, there seems to be something missing, I think, from the production. It seems lighter than other albums and it lacks a bite. I'm not grabbed by the first track, Compassion. There are some nice touches on the album. I like the sound of the track beginning endlessly. But I don't know, he may have needed more time to work on these songs. If you've heard any of these songs live, are they better than the album versions? 2014, we've got Plectrum Electrum. I've made the whole video on this album. Prince has a new band, Third Eye Girl, and he just sounds reinvigorated. 2014, Art of Official Age. It's such a shame that there are only a few more Prince albums to come. I think Prince has really found his mojo again on Art Official Age. There's an exciting energy to this album and a definite change in his songwriting style. It's harder to draw a line from this album back to the classic Purple Rain or Sign of the Times. 2015, we've got Hit and Run Phase 1. And this is where I kind of rediscovered Prince again. I think it was 2016 when I downloaded this album. For the life of me, I can't remember why I bought it. I think it was because I was going to spend a week in Baltimore, and I like listening to new albums when I visit a city because the memories of the city become attached to that album. And I remember walking around the streets of Baltimore listening to this album and Radiohead's Moon-Shaped Pool. So for me, this album will always be associated with the streets of Baltimore. 2015, we also have then Hit and Run Phase 2. And I guess I downloaded this as well. I think this album is better than Phase 1. I think Prince does protest songs really well. This album has a big band feel to it. The reviews are also very good for this album, and I think its reputation will continue to grow throughout the years. This album has so many great songs: Screwdriver, Black Muse, and the extraordinary feel-good song, Big City. Only Prince can write music with this much scope. So thanks for watching this video. I'm definitely going to look at some of these albums in much more detail. What is your favorite album and why? I mean, is this something that's just attached to your memories, or like me, are you discovering Prince very late on in life and, discovering albums like The Gold Experience that are just beautiful pieces of music? If you want to join in the conversation, please do subscribe or press the like button below. If you got to the end, and I'm still here, I got to the end. Well done, you. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.